we go any farther, I want to share this story that came across Facebook for me. And it has nothing to do with my talk, but I liked it. So Emma and Murray were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, and Emma's granddaughter said to her, "Grandma, tell me your secret for a long marriage, the longevity of your marriage." And Emma said, "Yes, it's time for me to share my secret with you," because the granddaughter was getting married. She said, "Murray, hand down that box that's in the top shelf of the closet, would you?" So Murray got the box. And she said, "I haven't even shared this secret with Murray." So together, the three of them opened the box. And in the box, the secret for Emma's long marriage. The box contained 2 crocheted dolls and $95,000. Murray said, "Whoa, what in the world?" Emma said, "Yes, my grandmother shared this secret with me. She told me that every time I got upset with Murray, that I should crochet a little doll, and that would keep my hands busy and allow my mind to have a chance to clear." And Murray thought to himself, wow, only 2 dolls. He's feeling pretty smug and proud of himself. And the granddaughter said, "Well, what about the $95,000, Grandma?" That's the money I made from selling the doll."
I figured that one out before you got
I thought that was very amusing. I liked it a lot. So I don't know how long you all have been married, and I'm not married any longer, as you know, but I am taking crochet lessons.
Crocheting is wonderful.
Oh, yes, indeed. So we're going to proceed with our conversation about evolutionary enlightenment. Now, last week I shared with you the 5 principles that Alan Anderson and Deborah Whitehouse stated in their book, New Thought, A Practical American Spirituality, about process philosophy, which is very similar to evolutionary enlightenment. And their 5 points are: the world is changing and developing. That's the evolution. Everything is related to everything else. These are all principles we know. There's a divine guiding intelligence that enters into our lives. And 5, memories and other influences from the past also play an important role in contributing what we are. And also, also the 5th one is we can learn and we can live in little chunks of time and space. So those are the 5 guiding principles. So this week I'm talking about Andrew Cohen's book about evolutionary enlightenment. But you know, I love the way this philosophy works and the way the whole flow of the universe is. I decided to talk about evolutionary enlightenment a long time ago, like, I don't know, 6 weeks or so ago, or maybe even longer. So this week, it happened that I realized that I hadn't picked up the Science of Mind magazine for the month. And wouldn't you know, there's an article written by Ernest Holmes about evolution. I just love the way that happens. So, here's what Ernest Holmes had to say in the Science of Mind magazine about evolution. Evolution is a principle which, though invisible, finds manifestation in every form of life. is that it is the logical or necessary outcome of universal intelligence of spirit. But evolution is an effect of intelligence, not its cause. That's kind of cool, isn't it? It's an effect of intelligence and not its cause. So in other words, the intelligence of the universe is creating the changes that we see as and call evolution. And yet, the other part of that, because another principle of evolutionary enlightenment is that all things are connected, and therefore, there is the being and the becoming of the universe. And you and I are God made manifest, and God is made manifest through us. So we're part of the one whole. Everything is interconnected. Remember, that's one of the principles. Everything is interconnected. So, Andrew Cohen talks about the ground of all being that hung out in the primordial essence of before becoming. Did that make any sense to you at all? No, it didn't really actually to me either. So let me say it another way.
Thank you.
The ground of all being, the essence, the divine, we're going to call it God, just for shortcut. Don't anybody get all upset about the term God. That is, hung out forever before becoming. That essence, that godness, was in nothingness. And it had been there for a long, long time, however long. And it got a little bored. And so it started contemplating and thinking, what would happen if I were to become? So rather than being, I'll become. And that was the Big Bang. The Big Bang was the being becoming. God expressing. And so, that's the essence of evolutionary enlightenment, is that there's the being, and that is the historical concept about spirit. Being. We are being. But now there's the conversation that God is becoming. And so as it becomes, it is growing and changing. Because that is its nature. That's what it's calling to us. That's what it's longing for. So everything came from that pre-bang, which is all possibilities. And then the bang came. So I'm going to just read what Andrew Cohen has to say about the evolutionary enlightenment as a spiritual practice. Also emphasizes the need for human beings to learn how to come together in a way that brings out the highest creativity in each individual and simultaneously releases their potential for collective intelligence. Okay. So here's what he came to know and came to think. He was teaching his principles, and he watched as this couple were sitting in conversation. And he noticed that they were in a higher spiritual conversation because they were talking together than they were So, evolutionary enlightenment, EE, has a principle that as God becoming, we are more powerful and more spiritual and more creative as a collective whole. Now we know that, right? I mean, I'm not telling you anything that's not unknown. We are more spiritually powerful as a group than we are as individuals. There is the being, and then as a collective group, there is the becoming. We are growing spiritually together. And our thoughts, individually and collectively, are causing that divine one to become. Not just to be, but to become. So our collective intelligence is growing and changing all that is. And another principle, remember, that I shared is that we live in little chunks of time and space. We live in little chunks of time and space. But what is in this time and this space is carried forward and included in the next time and the next space. Thus, there is the evolution. So, when we think about time in that evolutionary enlightenment frame, time is not necessarily linear, but it's deep. And so we can travel from this time to this time. Everybody with me? No? It gives us the ability for space travel, but more like mind travel. Yeah. So it gives us an opportunity for post-cognition to know what has occurred in the past, and precognition to know what is going to occur in the future, because the time element is not linear. So that each moment holds all of the past. Okay? And also the next moment, which is totally a particular unit, contains that past and this present, and then the next moment. But it's not linear, it is deep. So we get to know past and present. Now, I would be out of integrity unless I told you. These are all ideas that I'm sharing with you from Andrew Cohen. And he just recently took a sabbatical because he said his ego was not as in check as he thought it was. And his mother had written this book that she got published about what an egomaniac he was. Apparently he didn't see that one coming.
She must want to share.
I think so. So I have to give you that little bit of information. But you know, so many people with new ideas, fresh ideas that are expressing ideas for us are human, and they have their human foibles. So it is not for us to kill the messenger. And it is for us to appreciate the message, because we all have our human foibles. I certainly know I do. So, evolutionary environment causes us to develop from egocentric to ethnocentric, meaning that I hold my spirituality, I am in my being, I claim my highest and best good, which we all can do because of the law, and because I am bigger and more powerful and better with the collective consciousness, I then become ethnocentric. I care about more than just me. And so then we become world concentric, and then we become cosmocentric. We just keep expanding and expanding our point of concern. And so evolutionary enlightenment, I'm just going to say EE from now on because it's just too much of a mouthful. It causes us to step out of ourselves and be concerned for the whole. And the old enlightenment, if you will, caused us to be in our being. And we could have enlightenment, as Andrew Cohen said. He's seen people who were enlightened and had all of these wonderful stories to tell about how spirit had moved through them and caused them to have a moment of clarity. And yet, he says, and he would know based on his history, that things did not change for those people. So there were people, and there are people who are enlightened, have moments of enlightenment, but they don't change. They are not expanding. They are not evolving. So based on these principles of EE, and I'm just sharing ideas here with you, based on these principles of EE, when we are collective, when we are using our collective consciousness, we become more caring. And what we think as far as our enlightenment goes affects the whole, the world, the cosmos. And it causes us to be called to action. So the being part does not cause us or call us to action. But the becoming part of the spirit, the becoming part of the godness, does call us to action. We have, according to this philosophy, the EE philosophy, an ethical imperative to take action, to become. That's different than so historical in the past of just sitting and meditating and then getting up. This causes us to meditate on a collective basis, to be together, and then to take some action. So that's a whole different perspective than we're accustomed to. So he says that each level of complexity in human history, the stories, the beliefs, and the incentives of various kinds, emerge to support trust and cooperation among the group. So that the more we come together in a spiritual bond, the more that we depend on each other to come together in a spiritual bond. And we develop a sense of trust of each other and of the divine. So the whole concept actually is that there is the being and then the becoming, which is different than the being. So the question is, what part are we playing as individuals, as this collective group, in the becoming? Because God cannot grow and expand and take action without our physicality, without our mouths, without our hands, without our feet, without our hands. I already said that. Can't do it. The divine needs us to become. And just like the divine, before the Big Bang, had that sense of creative energy, that sense of creative curiosity, which is very excited, which is very energetic, so must we have that sense of enthusiasm and excitement and curiosity and energy to be creative. And I imagine that every one of us at some point in time has had that amazing creative blast of enthusiasm and excitement. You know how it feels. You know that artists don't sleep, writers don't sleep. There's just that imperative need to create. And the divine has that same imperative need to create through us. The excitement of being part of more than we can be. We had a conversation at the practitioners meeting yesterday about, are we more enlightened? Are we more awake now than we used to be? Are we more awake now than we used to be? And so I have to say, I believe so. And so what does it mean to be awake in that text, in that context? It means to be more caring, more world-centric, to care more about the world than I care about my little corner of it. Are we more open? Are we more awake? Are we more aware? To me, we are. And when we talk about evolutionary enlightenment, I have to think that the internet is just such a prototype of God expanding. It's just another one of those evolutionary, thrilling, exciting things. We used to communicate with talk. And then we learned how to write. And so then we'd put pictures on the cave, and then we would write letters. And then we came to the place that we could send thoughts and communications through the telephone, through television. And now we can sit in front of, well, we don't even have to sit. See, that's just the thing. We can hold our telephones and communicate with everyone or anyone, in theory, throughout the world. That's the evolutionary process. Now we get to be concerned not just with our neighbor, or not just with our family, and not just with our neighbor, but we get to be concerned with everyone throughout the world. And there are fewer and fewer places for secrets to be. There are fewer and fewer places for ugliness to hide. That seems to me like we are becoming more aware. So, evolutionary enlightenment, to me, is ever so thrilling and ever so exciting. So I want to just share the last paragraph of Andrew Cohen's book. He says, now we understand the nature of God to be both being and becoming, emptiness and love. When you embrace this evolutionary interpretation of what and who God is, then you realize, yes, God is love, but love is a dynamic and dramatic will toward higher emergence. Let me read that again. Love is a dynamic and dramatic will toward higher emergence. It is God trying to evolve through you and through me, and more importantly, through us. So when I said this morning, first thing, thank you for being here. I am more when you are here. I mean that in such a deliberate way. Circle's Edge cannot be Circle's Edge without you. Reno cannot be Reno without Circle's Edge. The United States cannot be the United States without Reno. Nevada. The world. The universe. So we are units of the whole. Except that our boundaries are getting bigger and bigger. Infinite. We are God. I love you all. Namaste.
Namaste.
So I invite the minister and the practitioner to join with me as I move into that deeper place. And reminding you as we come together, we are more powerful as we come together in that deeper way. We are more expansive and more creative. As we come together, we are the divine, creating and expanding and growing through us as us. As we come together, we are touching the essence that was before. We are touching the primordial essence of the divine God. And conversely, we are touching the expansive essence of the divine unlimited. We have no boundaries. But those that we place upon ourselves. We have no limits, but those that we place upon ourselves. Because the infinite being is pushing against us, pressing against us to grow and expand limitlessly. Truly, God knows no bounds. And because we are that, we are boundless, limitless, expansive. And because our thoughts are creative, both singularly and collectively, life can be anything we imagine it to be. And so I just acknowledge the power of this collective group of divine. And I give thanks for all that is good within each one of us. I give thanks for all that is vibrant and vital and vigorous, excited within each one of us, which is also within the collective whole. I celebrate what we are, and I celebrate what we are to become. It is divine. I give thanks for it. I invite you to own it with me, to allow yourself to be grounded in the limitless possibility of all good by declaring with me that it is done by saying, and so it is. Amen. So, another song.